Hello. I think we are live. Great. Hey, welcome. Um, yeah, we're going to get started in just a couple minutes. Welcome to the History Chats this afternoon. As you can see, we're going to be talking about some baseball. Um, yeah, if you're joining us live, welcome. As always, if you're joining us after the fact and you're watching the video, the recording, yeah, we're going to get started in about four minutes or so. So feel free to just jump ahead if you want to get to the program. But yeah, for everybody that's joining us live, hope you're having a wonderful day so far. Looks like everything is working. Good. Always good to check these things. Yeah, so Gary will is going to be talking about baseball in just a bit. While we're waiting, let me tell you a little bit about some stuff here. So this is part of our monthly series, not monthly series, our month theme for the History Chats, bits and pieces, which is kind of miscellaneous. So the idea here is that we're doing some stories that didn't fit into their own or just didn't own theme, or we had to cut out of existing programs, stuff that just is interesting but didn't quite fit in. And so yeah, Gary wanted to talk about some baseball, so we're happy to hear about that. Next week I'm going to be I don't have a graphic for this, but I'm just going to be talking about, I don't know, three or four different short offshoots of stories that I didn't quite get to in existing programs of the last year, of which there are many, some of which are pretty interesting. So that's going to be the plan there. For the last week, and I'll want to make a point of saying this here. We're asking for your questions. For the last week in February, we are going to be looking at just answering general questions. So I think I have some stuff scheduled to go out, specifically asking on social media. But if you are, certainly you can comment here. If you have a question, something that you've always wanted to know, or just an idle curiosity, preferably about Marathon County, but it doesn't have to be necessarily. We'll try to answer whatever we get asked. So that's the plan for that. And hey, if you guys don't have any questions, then we'll mix them up, I guess, or something. I don't know. We'll see what happens then. Yeah. So that's the stuff that's coming up, I think. Is there something else that I'm forgetting? Oh, I don't think I've talked about this necessarily. I can. Oop, is that going to show? Ah, all right. Here we go. Hold on. Definitely prepared here. To the. Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's the wrong camera. Oh, hold on. There we go. Hey, yeah, History Speaks. So this is History Speaks series is going to be back this month. Oh, did that just disappear? It did. I don't know why it disappeared. There we go. So this will be on the 26th. So this is coming up in about 2 weeks. This will be set. No, it's not there again. Sorry. It's coming up in 2 weeks on the 16th, Saturday the 16th. We're going to be having Rick Ryer of Wisconsin Public Radio. He's going to be talking about the history of Wisconsin Public Radio, public television, and the sort of public institutions, public media in Wisconsin. So that'll be a great program. Again, it's going to be digital. So we're going to kind of hold off on going in person for at least a little bit here. But yeah, it'll be viewable in the same place you're watching it right here. All right. I'm gonna just cut my losses here and not try to get anything else here. We'll just get started. Yeah. I'll give it. Take it away, Gary.
Oh, thank you, Ben. As Ben said, this month we're talking about bits and pieces, and I chose the little bits and pieces about the early days of baseball in Wausau. Of course, that's a large story, even maybe larger than a History Speaks. An incredible story. from the 1870s to the current day. And we'll talk a little bit about the early years this day. But this first graphic, I want to just sort of a little bit of a summary of what we're going to be talking about, but really take a look at the top graphic, the top picture, because this tells the story of baseball at this one given moment in time. But here are the young boys and girls waiting for a baseball game, maybe a Sunday afternoon, coming from church. They're in their suits and ties and with their baseball mitts ready to go. So they were anxious to see what was going on at whatever field they were at that one given time. So it's one of my favorite pictures, really, of telling the story of baseball at that time, but continuing on through the rest of the history of baseball in the city. So we're going to talk a little bit about ball grounds, baseball fields. We're going to talk a lot. We're not going to talk about too much about the police having to rescue an official who was assaulted at Wausau. We really don't know that story, but it was a little headline that intrigued me. And then the story of people involved in baseball, whether it's on an organized team or back on the sandlots in the neighborhood baseball fields. Baseball part of this community for over 150 years and marked with incredibly talented people through the years, and we'll talk a little bit about that also. But we begin with baseball in 1845 in the Elysian Fields in Hoboken. This is where baseball started. New Jersey, of course, Abner Doubleday and a variety of other people all take part in that history of this national game. This starting in Hoboken, across the Hudson from New York City. But this is the official start, really, of what we now know as baseball today. But and then it came to Wausau, so here we have a little sandlot, some kids, neighborhood kids, like I said, starting with baseball and bat. And this is early. You notice the horse and buggies in the background. They're all ready to start in the national game. And in the national game in the 1870s, this is what Wausau was looking like. I use this map a lot to show exactly how small we were in the 1870s. No baseball fields yet. That will come. But we're ready to play baseball in the 1870s. And in 1871, 1 year before the city became a city in 1872, I don't notice, I know it's fuzzy, but a baseball club was organized in the village. That's when the Wausau was a village, 1871 yet. And we're starting now the organization of baseball in the city. Valentine Ringel and the rest of the people that were all a part of the early days of Wausau. So when we talk about Wausau, we have to start to talk about, well, where did we play baseball back then? We think of Athletic Park today, but the first baseball field that we know of was, at least the organized baseball field, was the Worley Park, the Warren Park ball grounds on the west side. This is a picture of that. They had the grandstands, they had the bleachers, they had everything, pretty much what it would take to be playing baseball. This came a little bit later. This was not on day one of organized baseball in Wausau, but we do not know exactly where the early days were. I think they were most likely being played at the fairgrounds at Marathon Park. That may have been the larger open spaces that allowed for the baseball fields to be built. But this is Worley Park. And Worley Park on on Garfield Avenue. So if you go to Garfield Avenue, see the crossing of the railroad tracks there, look south, that's where baseball was really started to become organized in the city of Wausau. Again, another, really well-developed grandstand, bleachers, a good place for people to gather on the west side for a good afternoon of baseball. Here Wausau's playing Green Bay in Worley Park. So I know this is kind of difficult to read, but in 1904, the article talks about what was happening in Wausau in 1904. So originally, the teams that we came to associate it with minor leagues didn't quite happen yet. In 1904, they were traveling teams, not as well organized as we'll be seeing in 1905. But the games were, we traveled to Oshkosh, we traveled throughout Wisconsin to see and to play baseball. So it was organized, but yet not a minor league team as yet. But that came in 1905 with the beginning of the Wisconsin State League in 1905. And the Wausau Lumberjacks was part of the Wisconsin League 1905, 1906, and 1907 in the early days. This really begins the affiliation of Wausau with minor leagues and the larger major leagues out there. And this picture, for instance, the person on the top right is a manager. I think this picture was maybe taken in 1905 or 1906 at Worley Park. By then we know that they were indeed playing baseball at Worley Park. But then in 1907, this is a picture of the Wausau Lumberjacks a little bit, also at Worley Park. And this is a year that they almost won the championship in their league that year. And you'll see a person in the front center was Mr. Ferguson, again the manager, Charles Ferguson. But in back of him, a little bit to the right, is a Frank Lang. They're spelling it with an L-A-N-G, but it really had a L-A-N-G-E. And Frank Lang grew up in Columbus, Wisconsin. He's one of the people that I would a little bit of talking about there. There's a couple people that we really want to mention in part of the early days of baseball. Frank Lane grew up in Columbus, professional in 1906, started to play for the Wausau Lumberjacks, Class D, Wisconsin State League. 1907, drafted by the Chicago White Sox. So already the White Sox were starting to see Frank here in Wausau. Spring training the following year with the White Sox. Then he came up to the summer to play in Wausau. Option to Des Moines, 1909, and then he went on to play 1910, 1911, 1912, and 1913 with the Chicago White Sox. So already in our early days of baseball, especially with the minor leagues, we had people already starting to jump into the major leagues. Frank Lane was one of them. So he was part of that 1907 team that almost won the championship, and he was a part of the 1908 Wausau team that did win the championship that year. And this is Frank's baseball card. And it's hard again to read, but I thought this was in 1908. Frank Lane helped Wausau win the pennant in the Wisconsin-Illinois League, and in the fall, the White Sox considered themselves lucky to draft him in 1909. He did not pitch enough to get into the official records, but in 1910 won 9 games and lost 4. So again, a person coming through Wausau, from Columbus, Wisconsin, coming through Wausau, and then moving on to the major leagues. And of course, that story is going to be repeated throughout the rest of the century for sure, in people coming through Wausau, playing for Wausau, and moving on to the major leagues. That's a large story that has to be told eventually. Another picture of Frank in a White Sox uniform. There's not much of a story with regard to the 1908. The 1908 team did win the championship. And there was just in 1931, there was a little article about them winning that championship. And then Charles Ferguson, reading into the article, Charles Ferguson, player manager, Frank Lane was a pitcher, part of the rotation. Again, a very famous team winning that championship in 1908. And then as part of that team in 1908 was one Ward Miller. He grew up in Illinois, 1906 with Waterloo, 1907 with Madison, and then in 1908 he came to Wausau to play for that championship team, and then went on to the majors after that, mostly with the Chicago Cubs until his final year in the majors in 1917. And then he came back into the minors, of course. But again, Ward Miller, a person who came through Wausau, eventually moving on to the major leagues and playing a big part of his career in the major leagues. And then Charles Ferguson, he was the manager for those 3 years here in Wausau. And this was sort of the culmination of his career. He played a lot in the major leagues, and he came after his years with the major leagues. He came back to Wausau as a manager, and then he would eventually retire out to be an umpire in the major leagues. And then, so from here on, I just want to tell a little bit about some of the rest of the teams that we had. The 1910 Lumberjacks at Worley Field. Again, Worley Field still there. We don't recognize the players anymore. Frank is gone, and Ward Miller is gone also. So the manager is a different manager also this year. So the team is starting to change. Again, we're joining a different league, the Wisconsin-Minnesota League, in 1909 through 1911. So we switched the Wisconsin-Illinois League, the Wisconsin State League, and then the Wisconsin-Minnesota League through 1911. 1908 was the Wisconsin-Illinois League when we won the championship, and then we went back into that league in 1912, 13, and 14. But if you take a look at the background, you now start to see a little different background. So this picture was taken at the new, whatever you want to call it, the Yawkey Park, eventually becoming Recreation Park, eventually becoming Yawkey Field. And you can see then also in the background, you see the band is ready to give the attendees a little bit of entertainment that afternoon for this team. And I show this picture as a picture demonstrating, again, the great interest that this city had. I mean, the grandstands are full at Athletic Park. The attendance was great attendance, great support by the city for the Wausau Lumberjacks in this early years of baseball in this city. But I also want to make mention that there was other baseball going on. Pine Park Baseball League down in Rockchilds was another place that we were playing baseball. There was other teams, what we would be calling Sunday leagues. They would, for instance, here the Wausau Tigers, they would be a Sunday league that would travel throughout Wisconsin really on Sundays, and they would be here sometimes in Eau Claire. Who knows where they would be going on a Sunday just to play baseball. And this picture is also revealing because this is that athletic park, but it's looking west. The granite walls are not as yet here. They came in the 1930s, but this is a great picture of the ball diamond really without the fence, but the marathon granite in the background is certainly is that granite works that we can see on Wausau Avenue is that street on the right hand part of the, but this is an early picture of Athletic Park. And then I show this many companies had baseball teams themselves. In addition to like the Tigers that we saw, that was sort of another team, but individual companies had. So if you can recognize the B&R, if anyone out there would like to take a guess at what the B&R meant, what company that was in the city, we welcome that response. So that's a little bit of a trivia for this afternoon. Let's see if you can see what would be the B&R. So again, another team, Wausau Cubs, another independent Sunday club that would travel around Wisconsin. They were most likely the Wausau, like it says, the Wausau City champions. Another team, another smaller team, another baseball team of these sort of independent, not in the minor leagues as such. So with that, I close. Just sort of a little bit of a summary. The early years up through 1914, there's not that much documented history. We have to depend on some newspapers which gave cursory reporting to the baseball history at that time. A larger history of early baseball needs to be written. A lot of research has to go into that. But the history of Worley Park, Frank Lane, individual people coming to play baseball is an intriguing story in the city. And this is just the beginning, because this really is just the beginning of the baseball story. The baseball story continues on, for instance, into the 1940s when the Wausau Lumberjacks won the Northern League Championship. And you see a little different athletic park. You see the granite walls in the back. So a lot of changes has happened to athletic park since that early days before the walls went up, and more championships, more history is yet to come. So with that, I turn it back to Ben.
Yeah. Well, I guess one thing that I was thinking about as you were talking, do we know why Wausau got the luxury of saying we're the Lumberjacks, or maybe in those early years did they have names like that?
They did have names like the Yes, they did have the names like the Lumberjacks. Because of our lumbering industry, most likely, but that Lumberjacks name, and of course that continued on to the high school. Eventually, would be taking on that name also, the Lumberjacks. But the Lumberjacks was pretty much our name, beginning at least with our affiliation with the minor leagues.
Yeah. It's just interesting because you'd expect, we're in central northern Wisconsin. There's got to be Eau Claire's got a big lumber industry where they start. But why? I wonder why Wausau. Um, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, I guess if anybody else has any other questions, wait, hold on. Switch to my microphone so you can hear me a little better. If you have any questions, yeah. Let's see, there was a. Didn't see any, but I'll hold off for a couple seconds here while the delay goes through, just in case anybody has any. But yeah, interesting. Obviously, a bit part of a bigger story of baseball and sports in general. It is kind of interesting because the early sports we don't think of them as sports in Marathon County. They were shooting guns, and that was the excitement, or perhaps you know harness racing or whatever. But baseball comes along, and that becomes the thing we adopt. So very cool. All right. Well, I think we'll maybe call it there. Thanks again for everybody for watching. And again, next week I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but we'll talk about some miscellaneous stories that didn't quite make the cut, or maybe I'll just talk about something in general. Who knows? I guess this is the month that we're just doing some miscellaneous things we want to talk about. So hopefully, I'll let you know what that's going to be next week, and hopefully join us. And meanwhile, have a wonderful week, and we will see you.